Hey guys, what's going on? Aaron the Speaker here, and it's time for Getting Popular with Aaron the Speaker. Quick, fast, 15-minute episodes, super easy, quick, and digestible. With me today is a good friend of mine and someone I've worked with for many years. Please give it up for our guest today, Andrew Robinson. Hello, sir. How are you?
Great. Happy to be here. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I love to see you in that cafe. I don't know why anyone's not there with you. Must be a slow time in DC because that's where you are right now, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, I've asked all my guests this question, and I'm going to ask you this question the same way. I'd like to know, you are a videographer, you are a story creator, you are also an artist, because I don't think you just kind of fit into the box of just someone who picks up a camera. Which one would you place first and why?
In terms of being a video creator or an artist?
Video creator, artist, storyteller, which one would you like to have as the top ranking to describe
Honestly,
you?
yeah, honestly, I'd say a storyteller because like a lot of the art that I create does tell a story. So those are different mediums to tell a story, but primarily the goal and objective is to tell a story first and foremost.
Okay, I agree 100%. Now, you are a fantastic video creator. We've worked together at FAU. What are some of the biggest and the biggest projects you've been a part of that you are the most proud of, the ones that you've done?
Honestly, I'd probably say a lot of the projects that I'm most proud of have probably been with you. So the Arthritis Foundation, doing like the Broward Walk was one of them, and then like the gala, another one. A lot of stuff with FAU, and then now with the DC Lottery. There's a ton of great stuff out there that I've produced a lot of content for and told a lot of great stories with. So
Oh, I appreciate you naming me. That's very nice. I will Venmo you the rest of the money I owe you for that bribe on this interview.
not
Um,
sponsored.
when it comes to actually video creating, like when did you get into that? Like, I don't think I've ever really asked you, like, when did you start? You picked up the camera, you were like, this is for me. When did that happen? What age?
I think I was around 6 or 7, and I remember going. This was in my old house in here in DC, like years and years ago when I was 6 years old. I picked up a VHS camera, or I think it was high eight, whatever the technical term is, but an old tape camera from my mom, and I was just curious, like playing around with it and just recording random stuff. And then like one day, I found out I could actually like press stop, go to a different place, press record again, and then play it back, and it like actually told like a story. So I was always fascinated by the fact that like you could actually record certain moments in your life and then piece them together to tell like an actual story or like recount on a moment in your life. So I thought that was pretty cool. But that was around like 6 years old, I think.
So, who gave you the camera? How did you get the camera? Was this a family camera? Was your family into film?
Yeah, it was like a family camera. I feel like every 90s or early 2000s kids their parents had like a camera just lying around to film like those random moments as a kid. So I just
Was it
found it
those
randomly
big
in the
tapes or the
closet.
small tapes?
It wasn't like as big as VHS, like those smaller like cassette tapes almost. I think it was high
Yep.
eight. I really don't remember, but something like that.
And then when you were in school, from the age of six, you were like, I want to be a storyteller. I want to be in video. I want to do production. Like, that's what you knew you wanted to do.
Yeah, I think at that point I was like fascinated around 6 years old, but I was like really determined like around high school, when I started to film my high school teams, well, sports teams, and then progressed into college and that sort of thing. And I realized I could actually do this for a living. So it was around high school that I realized that.
What is the hardest part about the growing up in the video world nowadays that everyone has camera phones and everyone is filming? Like, do you feel there's a difference between maybe an older generation who were cinematographers or video storytellers compared to how today almost everybody with a smartphone in some way, consciously or unconsciously, is kind of doing what a filmmaker does?
Um, yeah, I think it is definitely. I'm sorry. Repeat the question one more
The
time.
question is, back in the day,
Mhm.
videographers were kind of like unique in the surface where they were the ones who had the cameras, right?
Mhm.
Now, when you're talking to clients, you're talking to people in your industry. Now, I feel like for so many of us, the smartphone has become this vehicle for filming things. like as a videographer, how do you feel about this industry where so many people can be amateurs and so many people are professionals?
Yeah, I think well, looking back to when I started, like the barrier to entry was a lot higher back then, but it's definitely getting lower and lower and lower. But honestly, like I welcome it because it's easier to tell stories now, but it's more so focusing on like how can you tell a really good story that stands out. I think that's a big thing because like you can like make a cinematic masterpiece, but if it doesn't tell a story, like it's not going to stand out because everyone else has like a camera like you that can create these really cinematic things. But it's like I said earlier, it just comes back to the story.
Yeah, any chump with money can buy it, but not everyone can tell a story. When it comes to
Exactly.
telling the story, what's your process in terms of like storyboarding? Do you have a unique process in which you kind of like, is this something where I was watching an interview with Kevin Hart? He talked about how on stage he just kind of riffs off premises. And then the comic who was interviewing him kind of wrote it out like every single word. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is your process in terms of telling a story? Are you someone who needs to like visually see it on a board with sticky notes, or do you have it in your mind and you know what you need to get done?
Um, yeah, I think previously like I didn't really storyboard too much, but I started storyboarding recently, probably when I actually moved back up here. So I use an app called Milanote. So I use that to storyboard. It's basically just like an open, like blank space you can just like fill in details with. But it's very customizable. But what I typically do is like I think of the idea in my head and then find different frames from different interviews and stuff like that. A lot of the work that I do is like documentary based. So I look for like different interviews from like Vice or like Netflix or stuff like that, like high quality productions. Take those images, put them together, and see how they fit into the narrative of the brand or business in this case that I'm doing work for, and how that kind of how those frames kind of portray, um, I guess, what their overall message is and how it ties into that.
Has there ever been any nightmare situations where you thought you were going to capture what you needed, you went back and looked and it was like not what you needed at all?
Early on, yeah, for sure, but not so much anymore because once I started storyboarding, like things have become like a lot more clear. Because like the majority of the work has been done in the storyboard already with all the inspiration frames I've picked out. So it's more so just like sticking to that and like there's some minor deviations here and there for creativity, but for the most part, everything's planned out ahead of time. Whereas previously, yeah, when I didn't have a storyboard, I didn't have like any structure to go off of. So like it was like very Wild West. Like sometimes I'd go out, get shots, and like I didn't know if it worked or not. So yeah, storyboarding has been key for me.
Now, I know you are fantastic at telling a sports story. When we worked together at FAU, all your work always was fantastic. You also really love doing the nonprofits and things that have to do with charities, and I would say human pieces that are about like humanity and people. What's the dichotomy there between enjoyment of filming sports and the enjoyment of making more documentaries or making more pieces that are for charity or for nonprofits?
um, I've thought about that a lot recently, but honestly, I prefer more of the human pieces nowadays. Because I feel like I listened to an interview a long time ago by a video producer. I don't remember his name, but he was saying a lot of the people in their video career when they first start out, it's like figuring out how to make these really great shots. And like you get to a point where like you kind of peak and you know how to make the shots look really good, but then it's transitioning into like, now how can I tell a really good story out of these good shots? So I think like filming sports for me is like for really determining how can I make these players look good on the field and make it look as cinematic as possible to capture as much attention. But now it's like really like more meaningful for me to like tell those human stories and like really get people's messages out there. I think it's more of a challenge, honestly.
I 100% agree. And I feel like with the human pieces, music is extremely important, as for all film, but
Absolutely.
music for the human pieces is extremely important. How do you go about finding your music? Do you find any part of the storytelling process besides what is kind of the hardest part to continue the story? Is it the shots? Is it the music? Is it the editing? Or is it all together?
The hardest part about continuing a story or
Like
just building
you have a
momentum?
story, you have the
Hmm.
shots. Do you find that it's like you struggle sometimes maybe with finding the perfect music, or is it easy the music comes to you, or you
Uh,
have all the shots, you're trying to lay it out with
mhm.
the editing, you're trying to figure out which one do you find comes like, more easily to you, and the ones that you kind of had to struggle with?
Honestly, finding music is probably the hardest thing because a lot of the way that I edit is I edit to the music for the most part. So that's kind of the basis of the whole entire edit. So if I don't have the music, I'm kind of just trying to figure out the narrative. But like honestly, for me, like the music drives a narrative for me because it sets the tone of the whole entire piece. So for me, like music is honestly like the hardest part or hardest thing to find or to finalize in the edit.
Yeah, the music is very hard to find. We both know I go back and forth trying to find
Hmm.
music. It is not easy.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to being a videographer and being an entrepreneur, because you're both, right? You're not just someone who does camera work, you're very entrepreneurial. What was the most difficult part of being entrepreneurial with videography, being that it's such an expensive business to get into? Like the cameras, when you really get down to it, are extremely expensive. You pile up fields of equipment. What is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur and a videographer as you continue like scale up?
It really comes down to it depends on the kind of entrepreneur video creator you want to be because it really comes down to if you want to be the sole person filming and editing or if you want to dial that back a little bit, get more time for yourself and outsource the editing or outsource the filming and really kind of free up your time that way and scale. But honestly, for me, it's really been like, do I want to have an active role in this business or to be like more passive? So it's been like the dueling question back and forth for years for me.
Passive or active, meaning more of a managerial position compared to more like boots on the ground going out and doing the work.
Correct, like more like an owner operator or just an owner essentially.
You are now living in DC. You were living for a long time in Florida. Is there a difference between the style of work, the shots that people want, the type of cinematography that people are looking for in the two states? Is it? I see you shaking your head. Is it
Yeah.
vastly different?
It's vastly different. The process up here is a lot different, honestly. Because I can speak to a little bit of South Florida because obviously that's where I lived for the past 8 years. But a lot of the work down there is like very quick, high paced. How to describe? Yeah, like really just like flashy, like showing the lifestyle, that sort of thing. But here it's more like the processes are more drawn out. Deadlines are much longer. But there's really more of a heavy emphasis, and I kind of keep going back to this, but on the story and the storytelling, and really telling the narrative of the film, and less on like the lifestyle and that sort of thing. Because DC isn't like Miami or anything like that. Like, yes, we have like a lot of tourism, that sort of deal, but like we don't have palm trees. It's not warm, so it's really about like human stories and connections. Because there are a lot of protests here, politics, like literally everything. It's just like stories upon stories upon stories everywhere. So it's really just more of a heavy emphasis on that.
And Miami's more flashy, more of a
Yeah.
flash.
Yeah, it's more flashy. Like I feel like most of the stories down there are like more like lifestyle based, I guess.
Now, you also moved up there in winter. Did you find there was, I've always wondered, is there a struggle with your equipment in the winter when it's like extremely cold, or is it usually not big of a deal?
Uh Usually the biggest difference aside from being really cold filming outside is just like batteries and stuff like that decreasing quickly because obviously when it's colder like battery life decreases, so it's just better bringing more batteries, but that's honestly the biggest difference that I found thus far.
We're down to our last minute. I told you it goes fast. In a last
Yeah.
minute, what projects would you like to do coming up? Like I always ask every guest, like if you had a dream scenario, what would be that dream scenario?
Honestly, I would love to produce more like feature length documentary work or even a docu series, but really just focusing on documentary storytelling as a whole.
Is there a
But if I,
particular genre of documentary that you would like to focus on, and why?
yeah, I would say like I'm not 100% certain on this. I'm still researching the genre as a whole, but more like verite. So being like more like one with the characters in the film itself, not being like observational, like being hands back, but like more being like hands on and being a part of it, and kind of interacting with characters or people in this case in the
So not
films.
being so much the fly on the wall, but actually being there actively present with them.
Hmm.
What's a challenge with that, with getting people? Because I feel like when people know the cameras are there, they kind of maybe act a little bit. Is there a challenge with getting that close?
Yeah, so I have noticed, and I've started experimenting with this a little bit more, that people are like really hesitant if you literally just show up the same day with a camera and just like press record. I feel like the easiest way that I've experienced it so far is just to like break the ice. So like go to an interviewee ahead of time and just like build rapport. So just casually talk to them, and then come production day when the camera's already rolling, they're already relaxed because they already know who you are. And you're not just this random person with all this fancy gear showing up in their house or wherever filming. So that's honestly the biggest thing for me, just building rapport with the interviewee or subjects and just being there with them, being like their friend essentially.
Is there a particular cause or person you would dream of being able to make a documentary for?
Um, Honestly, I would probably say going back to Haiti. I did a little piece with a nonprofit I'm still working with, Archangel Airborne. So they do like a lot of humanitarian relief work in Haiti. So going back there and producing more of a more drawn out like documentary, documenting the work that they do there and showcasing the conditions that are there. Honestly,
If there's a documentary for any country, Haiti is one of the top countries that could use a lot of eyes and a lot of people paying attention to what's going on there so they can know how to help. For sure. I 100%
absolutely.
agree.
Hmm.
Our 15 minutes are up. It's been an absolute pleasure having the chance to have you on the show and talk to you about this stuff. We've always had great conversations, but I'm glad I got to know a little bit more about you in a more specific way in these 15 minutes. For everyone else listening, we appreciate it. This has been Getting Popular there on the Speaker, our 15-minute episodes, quick, easy, and digestible. Andrew, thank you so much for being a guest, and I'll see you guys later.
Thank you.